Hello, how are you? Was macht ihr? I hope everyone is gesund, stark, und freilich begashmis v'ruchnis. I hope everyone is healthy, strong, and happy physically and spiritually. Today is Erev Shabbos Kodesh Parshas Vayishlach, and this week, Monday night, is early Yutes Kislev. Tuesday and Wednesday is Yutes Chof Kislev, the Chag HaGeula of the Alter Rebbe. So obviously, number one question is, what's the connection between Yutes Chof Kislev and Parshas Vayishlach? My name is Baruch Kuli Yom. That means in this week's Parsha, there has to be a connection to Yutes Chof Kislev. And I'm very excited because I found something amazing connecting the Alter Rebbe and Yaakov Avinu, which I never knew before, as we will soon explain. First, we'll start with Tzedakah. Today, let's talk now. Then we'll say a prayer, and this is the prayer connected to the Alter Rebbe, as is well known, and that's from Kapitel Nun Hey and Tilim, Posik Yutes Podo B'Shalem Nafshi Mikrov Li Ki Berabim Hoyimodi. He redeemed my soul in peace from combat against me, for it was because of the many who were with me. As is well known, the Alter Rebbe was saying Tilim while he was sitting in prison, and he wrote in a letter that before, as he was saying this verse, Pod b'shalom nafshi, before he continued, right there in the middle when he was saying these words, he was notified of his redemption. And as the Rebbe explains many places, that this concept of shalom is essentially connected to the whole accomplishment and profundity of what Torah's Chassidus is, and as we'll touch upon it today also. But first, let's get to the Parsha. What I'm going to say now is taken from a Sikha in Chelik Chof Hey. Just some of the points, and that is, and this is immediately, we'll see a connection between Yutes Kislev and Parshas Vayishlach on the Pasuk, where the Pasuk says in Kapitel Lamed Gimel, Pasuk Yud Ches, after Yaakov meets Esav, and he went on his travels, and he finally came back into Eretz Canaan, Eretz Yisrael, the Pasuk says, Vayovei Yaakov Sholem Ir Shechem, Asher Beretz Canaan. Yaakov came intact to the city of Shechem, which is the land of Canaan. So Rashi over here says, Sholem begufay, intact bodily, shenisrapim mitzlaosai, if he was cured of his limp, because he was hit over there by the angel of Esav, and he was limping, so he was cured of his limp. Sholem b'mameinai, intact regarding his money, shleichasa klum, he did not lose anything. As a result of that gift which he gave to Esav, because he appeased, so to speak, Esav with gifts, as we saw previously in the Parsha. Sholem b'teirasai, intact in his Torah, shleishachach talmudei beis Lavan, that while he was in the house, intact in his Torah, that while he was in the house of Lavan, he did not forget what he had learned from his father and from Shem ve'Ever. We'll soon get to this Rashi, but just straight away, immediately, to connect it to Yutes Kislev, the Evan Ezra and the Sephorah both translate Sholem, which means complete. They translate it as Shalom, peace. That means that Yaakov arrived peacefully. Yes? When the Pasuk says, Vayove Yaakov Sholem, so the Evan Ezra says, Shem HaTorah, this really explains what's going on. Vatam Shabbat b'Shalom, because he arrived peacefully. Nothing happened to him. That's what the Evan Ezra writes, and the Sephorah also writes similar. The Sephorah writes, V'yova Yaakov Sholem, take if Shegir b'Shalom, Beretz Canaan, K'mei Omer v'Shavti b'Shalom. So, both Evan Ezra and the Sephorah translate Sholem as Sholem, and that's over here the idea of Chassidus. The Alter Rebbe says Poda b'Sholem, so we see an immediate connection. Okay, let's go back to this Rashi. So the Rebbe asked a question on the Pasuk over here, where it says that Yaakov came Sholem intact into Eretz Yisrael, he returned to Eretz Yisrael, you could have a big klotz kasher. I'm saying bekitzer, mamish in brief. The Eibush already promised Yaakov in Parshas Vayetze, v'hine anochi imach shmarticha b'chol hashatelich, v'asher v'yisicha elo adama, etc. So Hashem already promised him that I will be with you and guard you in wherever you will go and return you to the land, to Eretz Yisrael. So what's the chiddush that the pasuk has to say that it was fulfilled? Once Hashem promises that that's going to happen, it's already fulfilled. Also, there's another medrash, the medrash that says that he also returned Shalom b'banav with all his children. So the Rabbi asks, why doesn't Rashi bring that down also? If he's already bringing down Shalom b'gufay, Shalom b'meni, Shalom b'terasei, he could have already brought down also Shalom b'banav. Anyways, the Rebbe's answer basically is that the pasuk over here is not only telling us, he's telling us more than what's included in that promise. In other words, that promise is a promise, and that's why Rashi Taka doesn't bring the Shalom b'banav, because Shalom b'banav, that all his children should remain with him and to be healthy and alive, that's included in the Shmarticha b'chol hashatelich. But what it means over here in the things that he says, Rashi says here, is not included in the previous blessing. Why? Because all these things are lav dafke. In other words, for example, Shalom b'mamayna. Who says that you have to get back everything that you gave away? Sometimes you have to give away a gift, and that's it. So you lost it. Big deal. The Eibush is still guarding you. You're still getting out of the lion's den. And Rashi brings a lashon where it says that he faced two lions, Lavan and Esav, and he came out. And that could be because, and obviously it's because the Eibush promised Ushmarticha. But it doesn't mean that you'll get everything back. Over here, the chiddush is that even though he had to give a gift, he gets it all back. So that's not only basics, that's an addition. That's something that, we didn't think that it would be in such a good way. And the same thing is benegay to the limping that was Sadish Esav. Because you could think, and maybe you could argue, Ushmaticha b'chol hashatelich is anything that's coming from physical forces on this planet, from planet Earth. But something that comes Sadish Esav, a spiritual entity, a spiritual being that obviously is coming directly from Hashem, even though it's from the opposite side, so to speak, you might think that that could do a certain damage. So therefore the chiddush is, not only it didn't cause you to become down and out, that you were never out, chas v'sholem, and you defeated the angel, but maybe you have to pay a price. Sometimes there's a casualty. Zok menein, and that's the chiddush. Vayova Yaakov Sholem, there was no impression. There was no left Rishimu. Nothing was what happened as a result of his encounter with the angel of Esav. And the same thing is concerning Teirosai, that his Torah remained intact. We know a rule, if a person is involved in a business, and like Yaakov himself said, that he was busy day and night working in the business of the tzoyin and all that stuff, so how could he learn Torah? Maybe you'd lose some of the Torah. So again, that's not included in the bracha b'shmarticha, and that's the point why Rashi has to bring out these things over here, because it's taka chiddush. Each one of these things is a chiddush. And the Rebbe says a lesson over here, by the way, which is a medical lesson, that when it came to the idea of, shalom b'mamayna and shalom b'gufay, first there was a price to pay. There was a temporary loss. But then he recouped it, then he got it back. But when it comes to Torah, and it says that his Torah remained complete, when it comes to the spiritual, he didn't lose anything. And this is a tremendous lesson for all of us dealing with the world and elevating the world, and our avodah of dirib tachtonim, that sometimes you might think that you might have to lose something spiritually. And over here we see that when it comes to the physical, your energies, your time, your sweat and tears, sometimes you have to invest in things that doesn't seem to be profitable for you. And sometimes it seems like you're making a sacrifice. But when it comes to your ruchnistic level, you don't have to lose anything at all. You can remain as strong as ever. And this is, by the way, the Rebbe quotes from the word of the Rebbe Rashab, where he says, "Not unto the gufim zering gegangen golus, aber nicht in the neshama." So therefore, only the body is affected by exile, but our neshama is not affected by exile. We don't have to have any sort of diminishing or weakening or loss, even temporarily. So as a side point, one of the reasons why I'm speaking about this, and we really haven't gotten to this Kislev, is because I find that so much of today's speakers talk about people that are shattered, people that are broken. And I think we're not discounting people that are suffering and people that are dealing with struggles and people that have challenges. And there's nothing to talk about, that we have to deal with it. And it's important, like we say, we acknowledge the struggle and all that stuff. But you know what? There's another narrative. The other narrative is, let's speak not so much about the idea of being broken and the idea of being shattered and the idea of the struggle. Let's talk about Yaakov Shalom. Let's talk about the power. Let's talk about the empowerment. Let's talk about the message that we're getting over here. That even though Yaakov faced unbelievable challenges, he had a brother, a psychopathic brother that was chasing after him, gunning for him to kill him. In the story of Esau. And the same idea, living by his uncle, the gangster. And being able to bring up children that are 100% God-fearing and with the right values and virtues. And so on and so forth. So this is the message we have to live with. Our grandfather Yaakov. Yaakov Sholem Umangau, we got the power. You have unbelievable resources of faculties. And we have to go with the right confidence and betochen in Hashem. And there might be some level of momentarily sacrifice, but zero b'terasai and zero b'nishmasai, etc. And I think this is the sort of dialogue and conversation that we should have more than the other sort of dialogue where we talk about the problem so much. Let's talk about the solution more. And now let's go back to, okay, before we get to Yutas Kislev, Bekitza, in the last couple of weeks we spoke about Yaakov. So I think 2 weeks ago, last week. So this week we're going to add another aspect to it. And that is that Yaakov, the reason why he is Sholem, complete in all areas, is because he is Etzem. He is Kavem Tzoi. And like Rashi, and the Alter Rebbe in Igeres HaKodesh, Siman Tetzvov, we know that Yaakov, Abraham is Chesed. And Yitzchak represents Gvura. And Yaakov is Teferes, and as the Alter Rebbe writes in Igeres HaKodesh beautifully about Siman Tetzvov, about what does Teferes mean. Teferes means that since it's the middle level in the Kras Teferes, it is called beauty. And then he says, "Kamei big day Teferes al derech mashal," like a beautiful garment, shubeget tzavua begvonim harbe, muravim bederech shi Teferes v'noi, which are dyed with many colors, blended in a way that gives rise to beauty and decoration. Mashein kem beged atzavua begoven echad l'shayich be'loshen Teferes. To a garment dyed in one color, however, in contrast, one cannot apply the term Teferes, because Teferes implies beauty of harmony, and that's the attribute of Yaakov. So this is going to be one of the main chidushim of Chassidus, the Alter Rebbe in particular, and therefore he comes out complete in every single area, because essence permeates everything. And I'm going to connect it now to the beginning of the Parsha, where it speaks that Yaakov is about to encounter Esau, and then Rashi says over there, the famous Rashi, where Rashi says that Hiskin Atzma L'Shloisha Dvarim. Yaakov prepared himself for three things. L'Doiron, for paying tribute. He gave stuff to Esau, as we just mentioned. Nisa Shalom B'Mamoina, even though he gave away in the end, he didn't lose anything. The tefillah for prayer, he also prayed. Ol milchama for war. And Rashi brings a proof from all the psukim where he did all these three things. So, first of all, in general, it's very interesting. The Ramban over here, in the beginning of Parshas Vayishlach, says that from here we learn out, right away in the beginning of the Parsha, the Ramban says that V'roi lanu leches b'darkei shel tzadik, we shall learn from Yaakov, shenizmen atzmeinu l'shloisha sadvarim shehizmen hu es atzmai, that for the future generations, we should prepare ourselves in the three ways like he prepared himself. L'tfila, l'doiren, for prayer and for gifts, u'latzola b'derech milchama, and even for war. L'vroyach, l'inotza, like he split up his camp, run away and to be saved. Ukvar ro Rabbi Seinu arem zazeh min ha-parsha hazois. So for the future history of Yiddishkeit, for Judaism, the Jewish nation, we learn out from this parsha how to deal with situations of opposition from the other nations. In a way, it's like, they say the famous line, my instructor in intelligence or in warfare or in the military always said, you should always have a plan B, which means be prepared for every eventuality. So this is one idea in a simple sense, that Ma'isa of a similar bun, and we learn from Yaakov Avinu that you should have a multifaceted approach. And this fits perfectly with the idea of Tiferes. It's not a one-trick pony, it's not a one direction. It's an avodah which incorporates all kavim. It's an avodah which incorporates all avenues, all paths, all options. Now, what we're going to see now is that it's not only a physical thing, a message about survival, that the smart way is don't put all your eggs in one basket, but it actually represents the deepest kavona elyoina, that this is how the Eibishter wants we should bring godliness into the world. The middle path represents etzem. I think we spoke about that last week. Now, how do we see that? And this is what I meant, that I saw an unbelievable connection between the Alter Rebbe and Yaakov. Everyone knows that in the talks of the Rebbe on Sukkot, so we say that there's the Spizen, the guests that come for Sukkot, and there's the Chassidische Spizen. Let's say the first night is Avram, and that's the Baal Shem Tov correspondingly, and then there's Yitzchak, and then that's corresponding to Mr. Magid. And we say that the third night of Sukkot is Yaakov, as we spoke last week about the pasuk Ozi Boka Keshachar Erecha, and who is that corresponding with? The Alter Rebbe. And this is, the Frierdiker Rebbe brings it in his talks, etc. But now, my friends, listen to this. First of all, a story with the Barditcheva and Yutas Kislev. The Alter Rebbe, before he went, he was being arrested and he knew he was going to prison, he sent one of his chassidim with a pan to live Yitzchak Barditcheva. Anyways, this chassid lost the pan, and he came to Yitzchak Barditcheva, and when he came to the Yitzchak Barditcheva lit his pipe. He had a pipe, he smoked the pipe. And the Barditcheva said, mit der Luke wollte ich gekonnt verbrennen ganz Peterburg. With this pipe, I could have burnt the entire Peterburg. Like, I don't know what's the problem. Why does he have to deal with this? He could just do some miracle and the whole opposition would disappear. It wouldn't be a problem. Anyways, so I'm not telling you all the details of the story. Look it up yourself. It's in Mishimis. And the chassid just told him that this is not the way of the Alter Rebbe. The chassid just answered him, the Rebbe is Chochma, Bina, and Das. That's a different method. It's not the way of just doing some magic or some miracle, so to speak, to get rid of the problem. Now, the same story is printed in the Kuti Deburim, in the old print, Omud Choftes, in the first volume of the Kuti Deburim. And over there, besides for the fact that this is what the Vayishlach Baditchva said before the Alter Rebbe went into prison, about the pipe, that with this pipe he could just burn the entire Peterburg, it says over there the following, that the Baditchva met the Alter Rebbe afterwards, many years later, and he said, "Favosoter of seine places, why did the Alter Rebbe take upon his shoulders as they feel so much? He didn't have to take upon himself so much. There was so much Yisurim, there was so much tortures and troubles for the Yidden, Klal Yisrael, Yisurim Shamayla, Aili, Yisurim HaNefesh, Yisurim HaGuf." And over here, the Lashon is that many years later, the Baditchva repeated in a similar way, you could have accomplished the same thing with Makifim. Makifim means with very super powerful spiritual energies, which the Makifim, so to speak, doesn't internally from within change the place or the opposition, make a transformation, but just overrides it and nullifies it with a very all-powerful, overriding force, so to speak. So when Rabbi Godel, the Alter Rebbe answered the Baditchva, "Nesav HaKodsh Baruch Hu Lisleis Baruch Dira B'Tachtonim." Hashem desired a dwelling place down there below. Atzmus had gewollt Dira B'Tachtonim. The highest level, Hashem himself wanted a dwelling place down there below. In Makifim is B'varam Be'efan Kach and es ken sein Be'efan Acharech. When it comes to Makifim, things are not so precise. In Pnimi Kavem Tzoi Midosei Shel Yaakov. But in Pnimi and in Kavem Tzoi, the middle bolt, which is essence, the attribute of Yaakov, but Dosem Madregas Emes is nit Faranken Emes de B'yoini. When it comes to truth, there's no imaginable truth. It has to be precise. Emes is Azoy nit Andish. Truth means like this and no different. So here we see in the words of the Alter Rebbe that he's saying that his way is the way of Yaakov. I never remembered this aspect, that the Alter Rebbe himself says that he's going in the way of Yaakov. But wait, there's more. The Alter Rebbe got into some disagreement with another tzaddik, the Baruch Mezhebusher. And there's a letter of the Alter Rebbe that the Alter Rebbe wrote to the Chassidim because they wanted to find out what happened, what was the story, because the Alter Rebbe had met with the Baruch Mezhebusher. And this is printed in Igeres HaKodesh of the Alter Rebbe, Igeres Tzadik Ches, Omud Shin Ayin. And the Alter Rebbe writes in that letter about the meeting that he had with the Baruch Mezhebusher, Ve'achar kach shol oisi. Part of the discussion was that he asked me, why do you have to go through all this? You could have sweetened the judgments by just passing your hand over your fire and your face. You could have just gone like this and taken care of the ganze Meise. That's what Baruch Mezhebusher asked the Alter Rebbe. And I told him, Halo Yaakov Avinu, Bevadai HaYidei Lahamtik Adinim. Yaakov Avinu definitely also knew how to be mamtik dinim, to sweeten judgments, like to do something. We wouldn't have to face the whole threat of Esav. V'im kol zeh Omar, and nevertheless Yaakov said, Achapra ponav b'mincha, I will appease his anger with a gift. So the Alter Rebbe wrote this. This is mamish written Ksav Yad of the Alter Rebbe. He's saying that he learned from Yaakov that this is the way to go. The truth is, you need hamtakas adinim, which is, let's say, the idea of prayer, the spiritual, supernatural intervention, so to speak. But v'gam mincha shlucha le'esav, even though you need them takasadinim, and Yaakov did things to make the sweetening of the judgments, but also he sent menucha Esav, a gift to Esav. So now we see twice in the words of the Alter Rebbe where he's comparing himself to this derech of Yaakov of the beginning of this week's Parsha, that he learns his kenatzim l'shleisha dvarim, and this is similar to the idea of Pada b'sholem nafshi. What is the real meaning of sholem? The real meaning of sholem is that the opposition agrees to you. And that's the chiddush. Now the truth is, it's already very, very late. And it will take another half hour to explain the concept, how Kislev is in the 3rd month. There's a concept of 1, and there's a concept of 2, and there's a concept of 3. And the ultimate, and that's why Kislev is the 3rd month from Tishrei, because the idea of true peace means the idea of 3. What's the idea of 3? There's one derech, which is Avram, which is Milmaila Lamata, from above to below. Then there's the Avodah of Yitzchak, which is Milmata Lamaila, from below upward. And then there's the Avodah of Yaakov, Teferes, which is the fusion of both of these ways, and the advantage of each one. So you know what? Let's just pick quickly. We'll talk about one example for this, or 2 examples for this. Mamish, very short. I hope you get it. One example is from Nes Teva and Nes Hamalubish B'Teva. There's one method where Hashem makes a miracle. When the Eibishter makes a miracle, a supernatural miracle, he overrides whatever the laws of nature are, whatever the laws of physics are, and the Eibishter can do what he wants. So by destroying nature, you see the revelation of godliness. Okay, that's one method. That's Nes. That's Malmayla Lamata. Then we have Mata Lamayla. We look at nature, Marabu Masech Hashem, Magodlu Masech Hashem, and we see the beauty of God through nature. But when you see the beauty of God through nature, that's a limited Hashem. That's an Hashem that lowered himself to the world, and from the world we see the greatness of Hashem. But is that the ultimate greatness of Hashem? That's a greatness of Hashem where it seems pretty limited. But then we say there's a 3rd level, which is higher than either one. It's called the Nes Hamalubish B'Teva, which means that it's not just the beauty because we see nature, Magodla Masach Hashem, but we see something which is extraordinary, that we have to say it's a Nes, it's a miracle. Like in the Nes of Purim, it's a Nes Hamalubish B'Teva, and we say the Bracha Sha'asa Nisim. So it draws out from us an appreciation of something which is spectacular and unbelievable and amazing, but that's like the world itself got made over, that the miraculous force also comes through the world of nature and limitations, but it's the fusion of both, because it's a Nes. On the one hand, Hamalubish B'Teva. Another example is there's 2 types of teachers. One teacher is that you reveal to the student great truths that existed in previous generations. That's the concept of Vayishlach Cheni Ma'abetipa. In other words, you make a student that contains truths and ideas that were from previous generations, from previous giants. So it's amazing. But the problem with that is he didn't really give the student the ability to have his own path in coming up with innovations, etc. Then you have another teacher who takes a student by the hand, step by step, and develops the student, so the student himself has a path, and the student himself comes up with some innovations. The thing is that the innovations of the student will never come to any of the innovations from previous generations, because his level of understanding is usually lower. It's the next generation. He's just a disciple. So the mile of the first way is the mile of the Oyer, the light. Is a greater light, a more profound idea, more brilliant. And the advantage of the second way is that the Mayan HaMizgaber, because Torah keeps on going, every generation has their sages that come up with their innovations. But the third way, so one way, the first way is Mamayla Lamata. It's more that we shine a great light upon the recipient. The second way is Mamata Lamayla. We take the student, we work with the student. But the ultimate is we say, Chushe Talmud Nasa Chushe Rav. The ultimate way is that we work so much with the student that the student himself becomes like a master. And that means it's the fusion of both. We work with the student, but at the same time, the student becomes developed in such a way that he graduates from level student and he himself becomes a master on the highest level. And this is the idea of Chassidus Chabad. Chabad means that we took stuff that's l'mayla min haseichel, beyond intellect, and that itself was brought on intellect, but it didn't sacrifice the aspect of it that's beyond intellect. In any case, what's the lesson we have to take from this? That the method, 2 points I want to bring out. One way is the way of Chabad. The way of Chabad is not makifim, it's more win them over. Win them over. Don't be limited to one way. And we see from the Alter Rebbe, you have to go through it. He would have to go through the experience, but because he's connected to essence, he's able to cause that even the opposition himself becomes transformed from within. And that's the Chiddush. That not that it becomes diluted, not that it becomes less. It means that you would go to the heart of the opposition, and because you're connected to essence, the power of the essence could transform any opposition. So the Rebbe should help, and like I said in the beginning of the video, I think we have to talk more about this sort of dialogue. Yaakov Sholem, you're healthy, you have powers, you could overcome all challenges. Not only you could overcome all challenges, you could become stronger from it. And not only that, you don't have to lose any of the Torah, not even temporarily, like we spoke before. It's just that we have to be connected to the Avos Chassidus, to Hashem, as we verbunden oben, Fabna Sharab unten, good Shabbos, good Yontif, as Kislev, and the Rebbe should help. Just like we saw in the story of Kislev, there was Pod the B'Shalom Nafshi. We should come to the ultimate Shalom, Begula Mitzvah Shlema, take it from Yad Mamish. Posting from my home, Be'ez Hashem Yisbarach, your man in Melbourne.